Unmute. Hello. I think I can hear it from hers. I'll do that. I think it's Jamie's computer. Good, I'm glad we're doing this with you. Thank you so much. Can you turn on? Hello, Jim. That should be on YouTube. When it works, it's a lot of fun.
Come in.
Hello.
We're doing double duty.
Hey, Jamie.
Hello, I'm sorry with the mask, I have no clue.
Melanie with True Family Service. No
Hi,
worries at
Melanie.
all.
How are you? Nice to see you. Make yourself comfortable.
Thank you. This is such a nice place.
It is a nice place. I haven't been here before. What's happening? I'm getting a lot of stuff from you.
Are you?
Yes.
Just from JFS, you
Yeah.
mean? Yeah, I know. Faces is coming up. Our first in-person event.
Well, and do you know I'm the honorary?
Yes,
Oh,
yes, okay. Of course, you, Hannah, and
Yeah.
your brother, right? Yep,
Very, so I'm a little overwhelmed. And actually, I want your advice. If people don't specifically say they sponsor or send a donation in my honor, I don't send them a thank you. Do I or do I?
I would say no,
But should I?
I mean, it's up to you.
But if there are ones that I know my mother got them to do it.
I mean, it's a nice, I think it's a nice gesture to say thank you. You know, I don't think it's mandatory.
Well, of course,
Right, and I don't want to be, but it's probably good, you know, relationship with management type of a thing.
especially like the family.
Yeah.
I haven't given it such a long time. Do you know why they haven't?
No,
I know why they haven't.
no.
They stuff. When did you join?
Got some good shots.
Would you like to have some lunch?
Sure.
Well, okay, it is lunchtime, but that's probably what my body was trying to tell me.
All right, sorry, everybody. We're busy trying to do a hybrid event. We're not used to this. People are taking a little time coming in. So everybody on Zoom, we sure appreciate you being patient. And we apologize. Hopefully it'll be really in just a couple minutes. Yeah. How are things with you?
Well, very well, thank you.
I'm so glad you survived this time, okay?
Yes, yeah. And I just had a baby yesterday.
Oh, Mazel tov, congratulations. You look great. You feel good?
Yeah. A few aches and pains, but you know.
What did you do? I'm good, you too. I have a few aches and pains. Yeah, are you living in your own home?
Yes, and in fact, I just bought a real place like the one level, so because I'm in 6 half levels right now, and the stairs are a bit much.
I'm looking, you need 6 houses.
Well, I'm in a garage level. So
There's 6 sets of stairs in there?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a lot.
It is, because I have to take my nursery to the light on my trash, and oh, no, that's too much.
That would be too much, yeah. Oh, great. Okay, so it's just one.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, test. Can you hear me? Test. Can you hear me?
I'm photobombing.
You were photobombing me?
Have a seat, and then as soon as everybody comes in, we'll start.
Okay.
Okay?
I do.
All right, everybody, we're gonna start, so. All right, I hope everybody can hear in Zoom land. Thank you all so much. Thank you all so much for being here in person. It's our first in-person event for a really long time. And it's our first ever hybrid event. So I apologize for a little bit of the technical difficulties, especially for people on Zoom. Thank you for being patient. We really appreciate it. I'm Jamie Sarche. I am the Director of Pre-Planning at Feldman Mortuary in Denver. I want to introduce you to Susan. Just walk around for just a second. This is my very good friend and colleague, Susan Johnson, and I absolutely could not pull this off without her. Thank God she's here to do everything with the Zoom and it's just going to be fine. We're all going to just assume it's fine. And I know everybody on Zoom is lovely and patient and kind. So before the Mourning has been really the basis of my practice in doing prearranged funeral planning for 12 and a half years. And we used to do it every year. Kelly's been a speaker for us before, and I'm just so grateful that we can do it again. And I'm grateful to you who came today. I'm grateful to you for being here. And I'm so grateful to my friend Kelly. You're going to hear such incredible information and soul and blessings coming from this wonderful woman. Kelly and I have known each other a very long time, and I'm so grateful for our friendship. She lives in my neighborhood too, so we get to walk our dogs together sometimes. And Kelly is just such a special human being, and I'm so happy that she's here to talk with us today about legacy and how to, share our values. So Kelly O'Connor.
Great, thank you so much. And yes, thank you so much to everyone at Feldman, here at Modena, Cherry Creek, and all of you for being here and all of you on Zoom. Jamie has become one of those trusted colleagues where if you don't know the answer or you need a connection, you call Jamie and she'll put you with whoever or whatever information that you need. So those kind of friendships, especially when we're dealing in later life and end of life issues, are really important in having those trusted relationships. So thank you very much. And so I want to tell you a little story about how I got into this crazy world. And that is when I was 20, I went to a big football school. I went to Florida State University. And yes, I was in a sorority. And yes, I lived in the dorm. And yes, I, had a boyfriend that was in a fraternity. And yes, we went to football games and so forth. But I was taking really cool classes like death and dying. Now, while my friends are off, with the kegs at the fraternity party, I did a little bit of that too. I'm studying and learning really cool things about what it means to be alive and what it means to die, the essential functions that we have in the world. And, we studied about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who her book on death and dying came out in 1969. So it was like right at 1970. Now I was in school in 1984. And so her material had already been out at that point for about 15 years and was considered, really, really cutting edge. And what we found is that even today, it still is cutting edge. We are still using her information. And what's been really interesting about grief is that there are 5 stages of grief. But as we've really been working over these last, say, 30 years with this material, we found that grief happens in 5 stages, but it's not linear. It's not like, okay, now I'm in the grief stage, and now I'm in the denial stage. It happens in this really complex combination of experiences that we have as we go through this process. And I'll tell you, I've been experiencing a lot of grief. Recently, I booked a TED Talk. That's one of those bucket list things. Yes, I'm so excited. But it's one of those bucket list things like, wow, if I can ever do this in my lifetime, which will be part of my legacy, it would be being a TED Talk speaker. Well, both of my parents are deceased. And what I wasn't prepared for is I wasn't prepared for this spiral of, oh, if only my parents were here. My mom died 28 years ago. Like, it's almost been 3 decades since I was with her. And my dad died over almost 12 years ago. And so, but that's where the grief, I'm still going through that grieving process. And so as we talk about legacy today, we're going to be bringing these conversations in. Some people find talking about death and dying is depressing. To me, I think it's one of those just facts of life, something that we get to do. And my mom died when she was 52 years old, so she didn't get the privilege of a long life. And also the world was robbed of who she was, in this world. The world didn't get to experience her. So that's really my view on life and death, is that we get the privilege of being here. Now, the question is, what do we do, right? What do we do? Where do we go? How do we contribute in the world? And then what legacy will we leave? And so reminiscence has been proven to be, for older adults, reminiscence has been proven to be one of the most pleasurable and enjoyable experiences that an older adult can witness. You know, think about in our lifetime. You know, think about a favorite band, a favorite moment in life. If you can talk about that and share those memories. I'm getting ready to go back to Florida State University for homecoming. One of my friends is getting an award. He's going to be in the parade. So of course I'm going to be obnoxious and yelling and screaming for him. But part of his legacy has been donating to the university. And he has endowed different scholarships in his discipline. And he's going to be receiving an award for that. Now, I hope he's not watching because it's supposed to be a surprise. But these are the kind of things when we look at our legacy, we look at what do we want to contribute and what do we want to leave. And so this reminiscence process, it doesn't have to happen at older age. It can happen all throughout life when we really reflect on these milestone times in life. So whether it's, you know, turning 21, it's like, okay, now I'm adult. What do I want to do and what do I want to leave? Or maybe like I had a significant milestone. In fact, Deanne was there at my 50th birthday. I threw myself 2 birthday parties, 2, because I thought, wow, 50, I've made it. Like life is to be celebrated. And so this reminiscence, I was really able, at my 50th birthday, I've now celebrated 55 years on the planet. But at my 50th birthday, I was really able to reflect and to see what legacy was I building in the world and what else did I want to accomplish in the second half of my life. And so people go through these moments where they're having, they're having these conversations with themselves. And I really encourage families to have these conversations because once we bring our families into this reminiscence, we're able to pass along stories. Now, what's interesting about the stories that we tell about our lives is that there are only 50 people in the world that are considered highly superior. Now, I'm going to try to pronounce this word, autobiographic memory. They have highly superior autobiographic memory. There's only 50 people. They can recall dates, times, clothing that you're wearing, smells in the air, temperature, time of day, like all of that. The rest of us are remembering stories, and we are remembering the feelings of those memories. So we're not always that accurate. And so that's one thing that's really important about legacy is documentation and journaling and documenting events as they are happening. Now, part of lifelong learning is as we grow in our life, it's being able to reflect differently on those moments in time. Now, I may have thought there was some event in my lifetime that was really insignificant, but it made the list, right, of things that I did for the year. But in reflection, you can see this beautiful web that's being woven through your life that you don't even realize at the time. So when I was in my 20s, I was 23, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. Devastating. She was 48 years old. And we had 2 grandmothers who lived with us at the time. So the whole family went into crisis. Both of my parents had their own businesses. And so my dad was busy managing those. My mom was doing the best that she could with her business. And I was taking care of my grandmothers and trying to take care of my mom as well. And so this moment in time, I thought it was just a bad time in life, right? This sucks. All my friends at 23 are doing other things, and I'm here having to do caregiving. And, I wouldn't trade it for anything, but it certainly was not what I envisioned for my life. But I adapted to the moment and was able to share precious, precious memories and time with both my mother and my grandmothers. Who knew, fast forward at 45 years old, I'm going to be working with older adults and talking about later life and end of life. I had no idea. While that moment may have seemed at the time, it may have seemed like a negative experience, I'm able to look back in my reminiscence and be able to see how extraordinary that time was, right? Because I just brushed myself off and I'm like, "Whew, that was bad. I better get on with my career and catch up with my friends." But little did I know it would be coming back around for me to be able to have really extraordinary conversations with families. So they're also, in the Scientific American Journal, Julia Shaw, she had written a book and she wrote an amazing article about the memory illusion. So this is something that's also very interesting in families, is as we tell these stories, you'll find that different members of the family have different memories of an experience, right? Everyone here in the room is nodding their head, yes. Everyone has a different experience. My brothers, I have two brothers, they always ask me, "What household were you raised in?" I thought the same one as you. You don't remember these things? But this, as we start to tell these stories in our family, she talks about the memory illusion. And there's part of us that there are some people that are more geared towards the negative. So they want to remember how horrible and awful that experience was, and they want to carry that on over time. And yes, it may have been a bad experience, so I don't want to negate anyone's experience. But that part of their personality is they want to really talk about how awful that is. And that's part of their process in processing that information. Where there's other people that you'll see, they're completely Pollyanna. And they're like, "Oh, nothing happened. Everything was great. Whoops, something bad happened as a family. We're going to brush ourselves off and move on." And then you have everyone in between. So what we're talking about today is about the legacy that you want to leave. And there was one other point I wanted to make too, and it was called memory hacking. And it's when someone in the family tries to convince you of their point of view. Has anyone experienced that before? It's like, "No, this is my memory of it." And they try to hack your memories and get you to believe what they believe. Because part of what it means to be human is we all need to be okay in the world. We need this sense of okayness, this sense of security. That's what we're all seeking in life, no matter what age we are and what experience that we're going through. And so as we talk about legacy today, to me, the definition of legacy is really what you did, like what you do while you're here in the world, how you lived, because there's many people that have done some incredible things, but their how may have been a little bit questionable. And so really how you lived, and that really says something about your character and something about your values. So the how is also really important. And this is where our families learn from us. Our families, they may learn, okay, yes, in our family, we go to college, or yes, in our family, we become firemen. You know, there may be the doing that they follow, but more so, they will follow the how we treat each other and how we treat our friends and our community. And the other thing is what you contributed. So looking at where we contribute, what our contributions are. Are we contributing to our neighborhood? Are we contributing to a religious organization? Are we contributing to the community at large? Or are we that friend that always brings soup when someone's sick, right? So where is it that we contributed? And the other thing is what you left. So most people think about legacy as leaving money, right? I want to leave money to my family. I hear people talk about this all the time because for the past 5 years, I've been an elder care consultant. And so I've been working with older adults and their families. I've worked with over 1,000 around the country. And usually it was in the middle of a crisis. And every single person says they don't want to spend money because they want to leave money to their family. But many times the problem is they're not spending money, so they're not getting the care that they need. So that the crisis becomes even worse. And then the family's having to jump in, and then it costs even more money because the care needs are higher, and then there's no money left. And so these are the kind of conversations that having these conversations over time with family is really important. This is not an end of life issue, and this is not a later life issue. This is a life issue, right? This is what we talk about. And so, so what you left is about the money that you can leave, but it's also the legacy that you can leave. You know, I was really grateful. My mom started her career as a school teacher. She ended her career as a real estate broker, and which is very interesting, but she used education as her way of selling real estate. And she helped so many of my friends buy their first home in a really smart and strategic way through education, where they may have wanted to buy this house on this neighborhood. She was able to say, if you buy this house at this price in this neighborhood, here's what you would get. So she used those education skills throughout her life. And it was interesting because when she passed away, you know, we had 4.5 years to prepare for her death, right? 4.5 years. My dad wrote her obituary, and he left out the fact that she was a school teacher. So this is one of those really important things is during a time of crisis, do you really want to be trying to remember everything about someone's past and putting it into a document because it has to get posted because the service is going to be right away? No, but my father forgot this, right? He was grieving and he was holding all of us. I was still, I think I was 27 at the time, and my brothers were 25 and 23. And we had our 2 grandmothers. So he's still holding all this together and the businesses and going through the estate thing. So again, not blame, but this is information, right? And so what he did do that I think was extraordinary is he gave a gift to the university. And this will make me cry because this is what life's all about, right? These beautiful memories. And he endowed the Mary Lou O'Connor Child Development Center at our local college. So while I do not have a monument for her death, I can't feel it, she's not buried anywhere. Her ashes were scattered in the Gulf of Mexico. There's nothing for me to go to pay tribute to her, but I do know that that center exists. And that's something where her legacy will live on. And that money went to endow scholarships and the building for future generations of teachers, right? I love that. That's part of the legacy. Now, many families are not in the position to do that. And again, I'm very grateful to my father for doing it for her and for us. But what can we leave? And so much of that is really built on who we are and how we live. So I've started doing a new thing with clients. So I sort of shifted my focus. And I've realized that, yes, as I've been supporting families in later life and end of life for all these years, really, I need to meet families earlier in the process. We need to have conversations way earlier. And so I've started working with people who are younger or are earlier in their life experience. Age doesn't have anything to do with it, but people who are earlier in their life experience to look at this life review process. And this, as I said earlier, I went through a significant life review at age 50. This can happen at any time in life. And what I think life review, one of the most important things to look at are our learnings. What did we learn? And whether you're doing an annual life review process or you're doing a decade life review process, but really what have I learned? If I look back over this period of time, what is it that was most significant that if I get passed on a learning to future generation, or to younger people, what would this be? And also looking at our regrets. We don't talk about regrets in life. We really brush those off, but it's really important to be able to say, I regret, I wish I would have handled this differently. And whether you're doing that with a trusted friend or a trusted professional, to look at how can you reframe that regret? Because obviously we did the best that we could in the moment, but how can that be reframed so it doesn't have to be this regret that weighs on us through our life? And the other are incompletions. Many times people will say, well, I'm going to write a book, is what I hear people say a lot of times, or I am going to travel around the world, or I am going to clean out my basement. You hear that would happen a lot, right? And so really looking at where are the incompletions in my life? What did I say that I always did? I know a gal who went back and she got her master's degree at age 70. And she worked from 70 to 80 as a therapist. And she helped so many people with eating disorder and addiction. She's amazing. But that is one thing that she always said she wanted to be a therapist. And so she did it. Now, most people would tell a 65, 66-year-old that that's silly. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. You're only going to work for 10 years. But it was one of those incompletions in her life that she wanted to do. And I salute her for that. Because there's something it's a spiritual principle that's called incomplete cycles of action. So in our psyche, if there's something that we said that we were always going to do, or one day going to do, it is always incomplete in our psyche. So anytime that we see the basement, or maybe just the basement door, or we read a really great book that's in a subject matter that we would be interested in writing in, or we hear a friend that's gone on that fabulous trip, there's a part of us that's like, I should do that. And from an energetic standpoint, that pulls on us and drains us of the energy that we can have to live our full life experience today. So this regrets and incompletions are really, really important for people to look at. And the other are milestones. And it's really those significant moments in time, significant moments in life. Bought a new house, had a child, got married, won an award. Those kind of things are really important to look at those milestones, because when we die, our family may not remember those, right? Just like in my mother's obituary, her whole life was about education, right? So part of the way that we love those that we leave behind when we die is we leave them with these milestones. We leave them with the record and story of our life. I know Jamie has a client who he updates his obituary. He wrote his own, which I think is a huge gift, right? A huge gift to the family. It just doesn't have an end date in it. But he updates his obituary, and he also updates his photos. At the end of life, and you're at the memorial and here's the slideshow of all the things. Now, he has his already updated. I love that. I found this picture of myself that our friend Carl took of me when I was 35 years old. It's a beautiful picture. Now, I had no idea at the age of 35 that it was such a beautiful picture. Like, I love it. I was clueless. I thought, oh, that's a good picture. I'll use that for a headshot, right? No clue. I look back at it now. I'm like, I was hot, right? Like, this is a great photo. So I tagged Jamie, who did my funeral plan and my power of attorney on Facebook. And I said, this is one of those photos. I want this photo on my slideshow. I put out the all call. Yes.
You are allowed to have it in the slideshow, absolutely.
Yes.
But it will not be in the obituary, because that's what sometimes people do is, they do that beautiful picture of them from when they were 25 years old.
Yes. Yes, the obituary. So for anyone on Zoom, that's what Jamie said. The obituary needs to have a recent photo. And so I encourage all of my clients to get a new gorgeous photo of yourself. Like even if it's a little extra money to have a makeup artist or get your hair done that day and go pay for a beautiful photograph, do that. You may even have a grandchild who's very skilled at makeup and now they know how to contour and do all these fancy things. So that could be a way to have an intergenerational experience, to have a beautiful photo of yourself. One of my grandmothers did that for herself, and I love it. And I had one grandmother who was a beauty queen. She was just this very elegant. She was born in, but she was born in England, and she was just this refined, beautiful gal. She was too vain to have a later life picture of herself. And I say that with all respect, she would admit it herself. This is not me speaking ill of her. My other grandmother was about this tall, and she was as wide as she was tall. She was never on the attractive scale. Not again that this matters, but her personality was alive and the most beautiful, loving personality you could ever admit. Or imagine. And so what she did was she had a later life picture taken of herself. Her smile, it's like a J.C. Penney's kind of picture. I mean, it's not, she didn't, spend that much. I think it may have been for her church directory or something like that. Her smile is big and gorgeous. And I love it. You can just see her. You can almost hear her giggle in this photo. And I love that photo of her. Now, my mother liked to be behind the scenes and would never have her photograph taken. And so the only photo that we had for her obituary was a family portrait that we had taken many years earlier that we had to blow up, that was grainy, that didn't even really look like her. So again, these are the things when in loving our families, we can provide them with some really beautiful tools to honor our legacy. And again, create a multi-generational experience in that process, or a surprise. I tell you, kids and grandkids would love to get a gorgeous picture of their grandparent. The other thing that I talk to about with my clients are about their goals. Now, this hits people a little bit odd sometimes when you have someone who's in their 80s and 90s. And we're talking about what are your goals for this year? There's something about retirement that people think that goals sort of go out to the wayside, right? Or now I'm just free. I can do whatever I want. And maybe I'm going to plan a trip to go to do a certain thing, right? But I'll hear people that are in those precious last few years of life, and they're like, why does the good Lord still have me here? Or what else do I have to do? And why, like all of these questions that people have. It's this really interesting sort of spiritual, reconciliation phase of life. And I'll say, well, what do you need to do? Like, we need to get busy figuring out what you need to do. And what a lot of people don't talk about is what is there to accomplish and do. Where are my contributions? What is my role here in a family? What is my role here in life, in the world? What am I supposed to do? So we have these kind of conversations that are extraordinary because people will come up with something. I had a client, Jane, who during World War II, she was a cargo pilot. And she wanted to fly a plane. And she was in her 90s. And she went up in a plane and flew the plane. And it was the time of her life. And she was written up in the Denver Post. And I mean, it was really great. This is something that she wanted to do. Now, her family, had they not asked, may not have known about this. So that's really something that's important to get people to sort of fire their imagination on what would they like to do and what would they like to accomplish. And then many people will talk about what are your wishes. Now, your wishes are, people always refer to that as end of life. I'm going to check our time here. We're doing good on time. For our wishes, many people think about end of life. So that's like, where do I want to be buried? Maybe what songs do I want sung? How do I want to be buried? How do I want to die? Those kind of things. Those are really important conversations to have, and they may change over our lifetime. A 60-year-old may have a very different opinion than an 80-year-old. So just because you have the conversation once with your family does not mean that that conversation is over. This is a rolling conversation about what you want to have. Because as we're presented in any time of life with new information, we may make a different decision. And so our wishes, Jamie and I are the founders of National Healthcare Decisions Day, Colorado, which is April the 16th. It's the day after taxes. So how they started it was sort of a joke. It's like nothing is as certain as death and taxes. So you pay your taxes on April the 15th, and then on April the 16th, you review your healthcare decisions. We've also incorporated to review their financial decisions as well. One very important thing that people don't think to do, and we encourage this on an annual basis, is to review your beneficiary statements. I had a gentleman who had an old life insurance policy, old. It was, the beneficiary was his ex-wife, who was not the mother of his children. He had 2 wives. And when he died, she received $350,000. Now, I'm sure his intentions were for that money to go to her at the time. But after their divorce, that is not something that he changed. Maybe he did want her to have that, but the family told me they had not been in contact in many years. So reviewing our end of life decisions, reviewing our financial plan, like where are we, going here? How are we doing? And the beneficiary statements. And one thing that's really important about wishes is we have so many people. Nadine is here who works with family caregivers all over the country. And one of the things is many people, in fact, most, if not 99.9% of people say that they want to die at home. They want to die at home after a perfect meal, their favorite meal with a family surrounded around them. They want to go lie down in bed, hands over heart, and just quietly pass away in their sleep. There are very few people that are gifted with that experience. Very few people. It usually looks a little messy in there. So part of reviewing the financial plan is really looking at what care will I be able to afford? And how will that be spent? Because there's many people that wait way too late in the process to do this. And it's important to speak with an estate planning attorney, an elder law attorney, and a financial planner to be able to make, there's some really important decisions that need to be made at least 5 years in advance of your death. Now, none of us know when that death date is going to be. So we need to make these plans early. And it's important to have these conversations with our family on an ongoing basis as our decisions may change with new information that we're given, either from a healthcare practitioner or just in advanced age. I have people that'll say, oh yes, I want to be fully resuscitated. Full core is what we call it. I want to be fully resuscitated. And then about 80, 85, they're like, maybe I don't want broken ribs, to do CPR. Maybe I'm ready to go if something should happen to me. So it's important to have these conversations because Jamie tells the stories that when you die, this isn't when you are sick and living, right? Or when you are more frail and living. When you die, there's 120 decisions to make. There's a lot of decisions in that caregiving experience that your loved ones will be making on your behalf. And so how can you arm them? This again is about legacy. How can you arm them with the information that they need, that if you are not able to make decisions for yourself, that they can make them for you? And people avoid having these conversations, but you can live an extraordinary life do extraordinary things, be an exemplary person with fabulous character and contributions to the world, and have plenty of money to see for your family and future generations. But if you leave a crisis and a calamity in those last few years because you have refused to have conversations, it sends your family into a tailspin. And whatever family dynamics, now every family has them. And in working with over 1,000 families, I've decided that every family has their dysfunction. People talk like, oh, I came from a dysfunctional family. I'm like, we're all from dysfunctional families. It just depends on where it shows up. And some families may be great families, but then you have one outlier. There's always that one relative, and it's like, oh yeah, him or her. There's always the troublemakers stirring things up, right? We all have these families. And what happens is during a crisis, this is where any family dynamic that has ever existed in your family is amplified with this death experience, with fear. And the more that you can educate and the more that you can prepare your family for this experience, this is what being a matriarch or patriarch of a family is. The more that you can prepare them for that experience, the more empowered that they will be. Because the last thing that we want to do when we're caring for another is to make a bad decision. That's our biggest fear, to make a wrong decision or a bad decision. And the more that you can be in tune with your decision maker and that you can be on the same page with that person and the other members of your family, the more empowered that they will be in that decision-making experience. So again, this is about gifting to your family. This is the legacy that we get to leave. So there's also one thing I've been going through, and that is all the photos. So when I was 45, when my dad died, I became the oldest living member of my family. And I'm the only girl. So the girl of the family tends to inherit the stuff, right? So the last thing that I've been going through are all the photographs. And my dad I had forgotten that he was a basketball player and he was a letterman. So he has his letter. I don't know what to do with this. Neither my brothers or I have kids. So I have no idea what we're supposed to do with this. But it's one of those things that I just can't give up yet. And those are the decisions as we're walking through, because when we die, our family, unless we've had these conversations and unless we've gone through all the stuff, they're not going to know what to do with it. And if there's something meaningful for you that you want future generations or family and friends to remember, it's really important to put those things aside and to make sure that people save those. So I have this one little dish. I don't have much of my grandmother O'Connor. I don't have much of her things, but I have this one little dish, and it's a dish where I keep my chapstick. So I don't know why. It's such a random thing, right? But I have like 6 or 7 chapsticks in there. And every day when I go to put on my chapstick, not lipstick, chapstick, I get it from my grandmother's dish. It's those little things that mean so much, because this was a really beautiful piece that she really loved. Now, I can't remember what she used to keep in it, or, she probably would never keep chapstick in it, but that's where I keep it. And so allowing our future generations to have these items of legacy and to be able to use it for their purpose in a way that they will remember you. Again, those are the gifts. Now, everyone asks me about China. Young people today do not want your china. They don't want your crystal. They don't want your silver. Some may for sentimental reasons. But I had a gal, she had 12 sets of china for every holiday, the casual, the dress. She's like, what am I supposed to do with this? And I say, that's when it's time to go on Pinterest or Etsy, because people are making really incredible items and repurposing china into beautiful mosaics and all sorts of things. Yes, it means destroying the original intent of the item. But my friend Susan, she just found her grandmother's china, and each plate is worth $150. So she's like, okay, beloved grandmother, I'm getting ready to cash these in because this is going to come into it, handy, this extra little gift. And someone will hopefully be able to enjoy those who collects that particular piece. And then what I wanted to share with you, there's this gentleman who I follow. He has a podcast. His name is Ed Milet. He's a businessman and a motivational speaker. And his podcast is called The Ed Milet Show. And he interviews amazing people from business. And he recently interviewed Maria Shriver. And she was talking about legacy. And her family, she comes from an amazing family with a rich legacy. But they've also had a lot of tragedy and hardship. And so that was such a significant podcast for me to listen to. I just loved it. And to hear how Maria was so candid about her life, I really appreciated it. Even with the own struggles that she had in her own marriage, she was just very candid because it's a part of life. And again, in this reminiscence, people need an opportunity to talk about these things and have that trusted friend or that trusted experience where they can have a conversation. And Ed's belief, he said that he hopes at the end of his days, when he dies, that he will be the closest to who he was intended to be when he was born. And I thought that is so powerful, because if we're born with this unique personality, these unique gifts, skills, and talents, this into the family that we were born into, whether we needed to capitalize on the family or whether we needed to overcome where our family was. But his goal every day in his life is that he ends up as close as possible to the man he was intended to be at birth. I love that. For me, that was a game changer. Now, I strive to be a good person, but I never really thought about who it was that I was intended to be. And could I end up as close to the mark as possible? So what I'm calling that now is I'm calling it alignment. So how are we living our life in alignment with who we are either intended to be or who it is that we want to be? Because there are people that are born in families with just really tough circumstances that have to overcome a lot. But there's a core being of who they are in their essence that is waiting to be birthed. And so during our lifetime, we have an opportunity to do that. And so I'm going to leave you with this as we're closing, and I can answer a few questions, or I'm open to any comments that you have. But I would ask, if you reflect on your life today, where you are right now, sitting right here in these comfy chairs and on Zoom, it's like, are you on track or off track with the person you were intended to be? And I would also say, what is it that you need to do? And it may just be a quick little idea that pops into your head. I need to do that. It doesn't have to be monumental. It can be something just really simple, like I need to write a letter to someone. Or maybe that junk drawer, maybe today's the day that I need to clean that out, right? But what do you need to do? And what conversations do you need to have? What are those really critical conversations that you need to have with the people in your life? Or maybe some conversations with people who aren't in your life anymore. Maybe there's an opportunity to heal some old relationships. And are there any areas in your life that you need to clean up? And then what is there left to do? I hope to be able to live a long life, and I hope we all get to live a beautiful long life. And what do we want to do during that time? And then the last thing is, years from now, if you were to look back on today, what are the things that you wish you would have started today? Because anything we accomplish in life, it usually happens over time. Like my friend who in her late 60s went back to get her master's degree. It took her all those years until she was 70 and she could graduate. What are the things that you need to start today that you're going to be happy that you started in the future? All right, thank you.
Things that just really struck me when you said getting to your full, ending up where you're supposed to be. One of the things that just really struck me is that when someone dies young, we grieve and we talk about often like, well, they didn't live a natural lifespan or whatever. But what I'm realizing is a lot of what we're grieving is lost potential. And it is really helpful to just actually acknowledge that, I think, and to kind of unpack that a little bit of what that loss is as well.
Yes, because I think about that with my mom. Is at 52, when I turned 52, it was this weird experience. I'm like, am I gonna die? It was like this weird thing. And like, how dare I live beyond the age of my mother's passing? Like, it was just this weird phenomenon that I think people who have significant loss earlier in life experience. And so, but it's part of that. Like, what could she have done? Like, how could she have participated in her family's life? I did a trip. She always wanted to go to New York for Christmas. This was like her thing. She loved New York City. She'd never been there, but just this idea of New York City, and she wanted to go. So one year I happened to be in New York in December, and I thought, I'm going to stay after I finish my business. I'm going to stay. So I stayed for almost a week, like 4 or 5 days. And I did everything that New York Christmas would be. I bought Christmas gifts at Tiffany because she always talked that was her favorite movie, Breakfast at Tiffany. So I went to Tiffany and I bought this little trinket thing. It was like the least expensive thing in the counter for my brother because our mother loved Tiffany. I went to Macy's Herald Square and saw Santa. And I went and I saw the Christmas tree. And again, this is, I obviously was raised Christian, right? And I saw the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree. I went skating at Central Park. I went on a carriage ride, which now I have ideas about carriage rides that I didn't have then. What else? I saw the Rockettes at Radio City Music Hall for their Christmas spectacular, their holiday spectacular. I did everything. I looked at Barney's and the windows for Simon Doonan. So those are the things that she didn't get to do. And it was the potential of what she could have experienced that we can integrate and create in our own lives. And just like the TED Talk, like I get emotional thinking about it. Like there's a part of me that is just so sad about being on that stage in December without her, because I know she would be in the back of the audience cheering me on. So I have to create ritual to be able to invite her into that day. So it is a day where I can bring her and my family into that experience so that we can all be there. But that's a big piece is the potential. And I can't imagine losing a child. That's one thing I think about, what that potential. It really can't even imagine it.
Other questions, thoughts?
Questions, comments? Yes.
This is such an important conversation, and I really thank you for the thoughtfulness that you put into this presentation and all of the different places that you went and allowed us to travel with you. One of the things that definitely just touched my heart, of course, as you talk about your mom and those experiences with caring for your grandparents and how you didn't know that literally was setting the stage for your life. Right? And it's those experiences, the ones that whether oftentimes we don't want to embrace them because they're our reality, but it's those experiences that really create the tapestry of our lives and allow us to become who we were intended to be. So I just definitely appreciate that. I applaud you and congratulations on all that you're doing
Yeah.
to help the amazing seniors that you are working with.
It's important. And it's the things that our parents will say, like, oh God, here goes mom again. She's telling that same story again, right? We get to hear the story over and over and over, but they're telling it for a reason. And those are things like I was able to share stories and this is the story of my life. And that's what I encourage everyone to do. We're taught in our society that we're not supposed to brag, or we're not supposed to be the center of attention, or we're not supposed to talk about ourselves. But this is our life, right? This is our life. And the more that we start to open up to share with the people that we love and who love us, these little intimate moments of things that are important, this is where we start to build that intimacy in ways that we, don't know when we're just focused on all the logistics of life, right? Because life has a lot of logistics.
Do you run into families and you're doing family planning or end of life planning where they don't want to have the conversation?
Yes.
They're scared of it. They don't,
Repeat her question so that everyone knows.
Yes.
and kind of how do you go about that conversation from that perspective?
It's so great. So the question was, do we ever run into families that don't want to have these conversations? Yes. And what's interesting is people will come to me and they say it's my mom that doesn't want to have these conversations. But many times it's the adult children. They're like, no. I don't want to think about you dying. I'm not going to have this conversation. Now, the conversation will not kill you, right, Jamie?
It will not kill you, but it does make you feel very vulnerable.
It is. It's very vulnerable. Now, I work in this space. And when I had my conversation with Jamie, I was very emotional. Like, I was surprised at how emotional I was about my legacy and what I wanted to leave in the world. It caught me by surprise. So just know that's why we have these conversations early and frequently, is because we may only be able to have them in increments. It may be like, oh, I've got a plot down at, offhand. That may be as much as someone can do 1 year. But then the next year, it can, maybe another conversation comes up. And I always say to families, use a current event. A current event is a great opportunity. So if their friend passes away and their friend happens to die, use it. We're like, oh, well, let's talk about her, and let's talk about what happened and what do you think? So use that opportunity. There was, when Nancy Reagan died, she had planned everything with her funeral down to the type of flowers that she wanted to have. So her family did not have to make decisions. They had to make a phone call. This is what Jamie encourages everyone to do. The gift to that family, that's all they needed to do was to make one phone call and the plans would roll into place. So how I have a way of working with families is oftentimes, because I have sort of a funny, sort of quirky personality, I go in with humor and, and levity, even though we're talking about a serious subject. I always try to find a moment of realness because I think, there's a moment of realness in everything and we can laugh at it, the absurdities of life. And so oftentimes if they don't want to talk about it, and I'll say, well, do you ever have a family that anything went into crisis and their family was fighting, they were fighting over the stuff, they were fighting over the decisions, they were fighting over what she was supposed to wear when she was buried, like all that kind of stuff, everyone will say yes. And I'm like, ooh, let's talk about that. And then I'll say, so do you see, we're still talking about that these years later. We're still talking about this. How would you like for your family not to be talked about in this way? So usually a person's really proud or obstinate about having this conversation. So I hit them with the pride question, or I make it to be funny. Like, oh, wow. So you don't have any plans. And I had one guy that said, yeah, just throw me off in a ditch. And I'm like, oh, that'll be awesome. And he looked at me like, you're not supposed to say that. You're supposed to stop. And I'm like, really, which ditch? And he was just like thrown off. And his daughter was like, oh gosh, here he goes again. but we were able to have the conversation.
I'm gonna start saying that.
Which did
Well, does anybody else have anything they'd like to ask or share, Elaine?
Well, I have to say this is so timely for me because I've been doing genealogy for many years. And in our local Denver group, a woman teaches a Write Now class. Okay, you should start writing whatever, writing about your ancestors, writing about. And I decided it's time for me to write my memoirs for my family.
Yes.
Because one grandmother wrote down some things. She was confused by the time she did it, and she repeated a lot of things. And one great-great-grandfather, I have this handwritten in pencil notes. A lot of it was about religion, what a fortunate life he had, and his 10 children. But the details of his life were in there too. He was born in 1792. Oh, and he wrote this in his 90s.
Wow.
And it's thrilling for me to have those things. So I thought, it's time for me to write that down.
Yeah. It's important. And for the people on Zoom, that class was called Write Now. So it's right now.
Go to the Denver Public Library.
Denver Public Library for anyone who's here in town.
Have you heard of that storybook?
Yeah, Story
What do
Worth.
you think about, what is it?
Story Worth.
Storyworth.
Yes.
Yeah, it keeps popping up on my Facebook and I think that might be a fun gift.
It is. The one thing is someone needs to either be computer savvy to type it up, or they need to handwrite it up. But yes, I get their prompts and their questions. And it's really, really great.
Okay.
So, and I think I have a discount coupon for anyone who wants to do that. I think you get 10% off for Storyworth. But they send you prompts like, what is your favorite childhood memory? What is your, how did you meet your spouse? What was the christening day, or what was, something with your child? What was that like? So.
But and that kind of, what you just said reminded me of when you were saying, do you have that one family member that only remembers the negative things? That's great for someone who only remembers the negative things, because it's prompting them to remember the positive
Yes.
things too, right?
It is. All right, any other questions or comments for today? I hope you gained some value from today.
Yeah.
And it gave you some things to think about.
It was fabulous, fabulous. I have to say, I'm worried about the people on Zoom. I think that the technology wasn't going as well as it could have, so I apologize to you if it didn't work. And I'm so grateful to you, Kelly. There was so much information. I will say we did record it so we can share it. And we'll share it with you, of course, and share it out on social media. And thank you so much. Really such great information. And I just keep thinking how great the TED Talk's gonna be. Thanks, everybody.
Have a better microphone next week
Next week.
for our friends.
Is that a
online.
problem?
Jim Huffman is going to give us a little bit.
Oh, all of a sudden my Zoom shut down, so I don't know what's happening. I'm a little worried, but people are on that, so I think it's okay. Yeah, I think it's okay, but, yeah, this